Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today. I'm Allison Lindsay. So on the show today, we have Meir Schneider. Meir is an international author, health educator, pioneer therapist, and founder of the California-based nonprofit School for Self-Healing. His publications include the Natural Vision Improvement Kit, Movement for Self-Healing, Yoga for the Eyes, and the Handbook for Self-Healing. Meir overcame congenital blindness and developed an original self-healing approach of exercises to improve vision and increase brain flexibility. He discovered that the same principles by which he gained functional vision could also be applied to the entire body, and has subsequently worked with clients with paralysis, polio, muscular dystrophy, and MS to bring more movement and function to their bodies and their lives. So Meir, it's a huge pleasure to welcome you to the Embodiment Podcast today. I'm really happy to have the opportunity to meet you and to talk to you today about your work and everything that you're doing.
It's my honor, Allison, to be on your show. And I'm so happy for the whole embodiment platform. But I'm very, very happy for the fact that you gave me a valuable time to explain people what potential they have to get better and to help themselves.
Amazing. Thank you. So I'd love to start with a little bit of background about you. What was the beginning of your journey into improving vision, body work, and healing through the body?
Well, if you see in front of you, this is my lens after 5 cataract surgeries, and this is a normal lens. So this is my lens versus a normal lens, and I had 5 cataract surgeries that destroyed my lenses so badly that only 1% of light can penetrate through them to my retina.
Wow.
And my surgeries were done late, and that nothing to do with my doctors. That was the doctrine in that time. And I was reading Braille as they're saying in my generation, 65% of the legally blind kids were born with cataracts. Now, it happens to be my kids were born with cataracts, so different reality. Their surgery was done in a much younger age, at the age of 2 and 3 weeks, because it was discovered at the age of 8 weeks, the brain starts to build up the occipital lobe connection, which means the back of the head, that's where the brain starts to build up the whole idea of vision.
Okay, and, where the vision processing is.
Right, was the vision processing is. And therefore, the surgeons removed the lens in an earlier time of the infant development, and then they put contact lenses to replace the lens that was removed. They don't put an intraocular lens because it's too early, the eye is too small. And normally, the vision becomes 40%, 30% of normal vision, so people are not legally blind. They can function normally. But in the case of my kids, they see 100% of normal vision. My son even sees better than 100% of normal vision. And that has to do with their specific character, but also with the eye exercises that I was teaching them.
Okay.
And so in the case of my kids, they see what you see with your glasses, basically. And that is a big deal. They're the only 2, by the way, worldwide that see that well. And that has to do with the training they had with me. So what happened to me is that I had my surgeries very late, at the age of 4. And the interesting thing is my parents are deaf. So everybody in Tel Aviv knew that in the deaf community that Ida and Abraham, my parents, had a deaf child, Meir. I'm sorry, a blind child, Meir. I grew as a blind kid reading Braille. In fact, I was the quickest Braille reader in the state of Israel already at 6th grade. I competed with university students. And something yearned in me to make a change. I did not know what it was, but I really did not want to live in the world of handicap. And while I really admire my parents who died, but I admire them that they traveled all over the world in spite of being deaf, and the deaf language is studied differently in different countries.
Yes.
I wanted to get out of the disability I had. Now, I didn't get out of it completely, but I improved my vision from 1% to 70%. And that means these days that I can read, write, and drive. And one of the reasons I live in California is that the demand of the vision for drivers is lesser than in many other countries. And that has to do with the old people lobbies, that they wanted to be able to drive even with a reduced vision. But obviously, I have enough vision with which I can drive. I definitely can read, and I definitely can write. And for that reason, I feel that I've accomplished a lot. And every day, I work on accomplishing more. Mm-hmm. And I'm so happy, in terms of my driver's license, I have it from the age of 28. So I have my driver's license for almost 39 years already. It just was renewed last summer for 5 more years. So I'm very proud of it. I'm very happy. No accidents, no tickets. Once in a while, a parking ticket, but other than that, no tickets.
You'll get those.
and I'm very happy with my accomplishment. But because of the fact that you could see in the structure of my eye that it is so injured from those bad surgeries that were done, and I don't really have any ill feeling about my doctors. They did what they thought could be different in their time. They thought the problem was the cataract in the lens, and they didn't understand the issue of brain development. I had optimistic feeling about other people. I worked with people with other vision problems, and the best case I ever had was somebody who's macular degeneration, whose vision became 5%, 2,400 from normal vision. And he also was hunched back, and he was 73. I was then 28. I thought he was an old man. Well, I'm getting closer to his age, but and I don't think I'm old. But he was hunched back, and I was able to help him straighten his back and brought more blood to his head and help nourish his eye and his macula. But I also learned that what he did most of his life was looking from near as a pharmacist. He was looking at medicine bottles and at doctor's prescription. And I told him to look 2 hours far at a distance. And just like London, San Francisco is beautiful. And there were a lot of hills. And he was able to look at the bay. And he spent 2 hours, not in one go, like 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, per day looking at a distance, beside other exercise we did. And within less than 3 months, his vision improved to 95% of normal vision, 2025. So I work with people with major eye problems and also with minor issues like you having glasses, or people who have readers in their 40s and they want to get rid of the readers or stuff of that nature. But I also work with people with paralysis. I got at least 300 people out of the wheelchair in spite of paralysis that they had. I must say it's not a huge record for somebody who spent 50 years working with people. But I'm very proud of my record. I'm very, very happy that I worked those years. And I'm grateful to the results that I got with people. It's different from person to person. And what I've learned is that the world is very busy in impact aerobic, fitness, and hardcore exercises, which are very important. For example, you can see me running with bathing suit in the cold San Francisco beach. In fact, I've done it yesterday, and sometimes bathe in a ocean, which is about 10 Celsius or 50 degrees, I do that. You can see me until now walking 50 blocks from time to time. So it's not like I'm against it, but for example, today I felt my body should not have done that this particular day. And so I've done more stretches and subtle movements. And so the idea is to be aware of your body's needs and to respond to your body's needs, both in your movement. It's something I don't do enough of, I must say, because of my love to chocolate. Also with your diet. So to pay attention, you told me you're a breath therapist. One of the most important things in the world is kinesthetic awareness. We live in the aspirin age. If you have a headache, you don't want to feel the headache, you take the aspirin. The worst case I've heard, one guy told me he plays tennis, so his feet hurt him because I guess they swelled. So he takes aspirin so he can play tennis. That is crazy. Or one lady said she has contact lenses that don't fit her. So she wants those contact lenses, so she takes painkillers to not feel the pain of the contact lenses. But
how do you suggest people get that kinesthetic awareness as opposed to blocking it out? But is there anything we can do to enhance that awareness further?
I was just there, right. To a great extent, we live in the aspirin age where we don't want to feel anything. But through breath, you can feel everything.
Yes.
So the beginning of kinesthetic awareness is breathing. And for example, many people think about breathing to your chest, but you can also breathe to your abdomen. And many people think you can breathe down to the abdomen, but you can also breathe to your lower back. Mm-hmm. And you can also breathe to your ribs. And you can visualize breathing to your head and have at least visualization that the head expands and shrinks when you breathe. And I have a tape that I made in the 80s as a result of working on some of my clients, which I call Breath and the Mobility of the Joints. Well, it became later on a CD. We still have hundreds of tapes that we didn't sell when there was the CD conversion. Thank God we still have some CDs, but there are MP3s now. So we have it in MP3, and it is an MP3 where you visualize that every single joint of yours expands when you breathe and shrinks, expands when you inhale and shrink when you exhale. Okay. And I want to tell you, it's the best anti-inflammatory that exists. Because right now, people, in order to prevent arthritic pain, take anti-inflammatories, take immunosuppressors. Just think, now when we have all those viruses coming, especially COVID lately, what immunosuppressor can do for you and how it can destroy your body. And when you breathe to each joint and you visualize it expands and shrink, you have temporary relief, and not as much as you do it with a pill, but accumulation of that plus movement can take you out of your arthritic pain. And guess what? More people die from medications against arthritic and spine pain than from all illegal drugs put together. And of course, more than from COVID. So what I want to say is this is an epidemic of the generation that we have because we don't pay attention to the body. So to repeat myself, inner feeling that comes with subtle movement. What strengthens you is actually subtle, smooth movement, where if you move your shoulder in rotating motion and you have a sense that the movement is not smooth, and you then close your eyes and visualize and feel the unsmoothness of the movement, and you visualize as if you're moving it again and again until it becomes smooth. And the same thing with head rotation, same thing with foot rotation, same thing with leg rotation. That makes a huge difference.
It sounds like visualization is a really key part of it.
And awareness, visualization and awareness. Visualization, memory, being in touch with your body. We always think, did I put some extra pounds? Am I nice looking? Am I not nice looking? Is this, we always, the body, how we're presenting it to ourselves in the world. What about feeling the body? So it's interesting. I came from the blind world And the issue of sensation is so important because until now, I feel the earth that I'm stepping on pretty good. And that's one of the reasons I enjoy so much running barefoot on the beach. As cold as it is in San Francisco, it's nice and warm in Tel Aviv when I run on the beach there, or in Hawaii when I run on the beach there, but not in San Francisco. In LA it's warm, but not in San Francisco. So when I run on the beach, I have more sense of my feet. And truth of the matter is that most people don't know that most of the movements we have, we don't even know about them because we don't climb trees, we don't walk in caves, we walk on cement with shoes, and the result is we don't feel enough. And I'll never forget that when we were walking in my high school years in the Carmel Mountains, and we were all complaining about the shoes and they're not sufficient for the mountains. And then there was a ringing of the bell and some Arab Druze kids ran to us asking for money, and they were all bare feet and nothing there bothered them, while we with heavy shoes complained about the ridges and the stones. So a lot happened to humanity where basically we sit a lot or we exercise in a very strenuous manner. And we don't have the in-between of, first of all, feeling before we move. And you know that sensation leads to perfect movement. So we have more than 600 muscles, and most people use between 50 and 100 of them. And we're not really aware of all the muscles we never use. For example, armless people can feed themselves with the toes. And when I teach in my classes to move the toes one by one, people frown. They have no control over the toes. And yet you step on them all day long. And they affect your posture. They affect your internal organs. They affect everything that exists in you. But most people have no control over the toes. And also, when we talk about control of our hands, it's very easy for people to clench a fist because we tend to bend our fingers, but we don't tend to stretch our fingers. So a lot of the exercise I teach is the opposite of what you do. So, for example, returning to vision, looking at the distance is such a big rest than looking at Zoom. And I'm happy that many of your audience listen. So when you listen, it's good for you to look at a distance. It's also good for you to rest your eyes. I'll show you an exercise with which you can listen to me and rest your eyes, even if you look at the screen. I think it is so important that we will do the opposite of what we always do. So we activate more parts of our body and stimulate the brain and build new cells in the brain. And that's recent research shows that you actually can bring more blood and you can actually build more cells in your brain. That is something that was a no-no in the times that I studied pathophysiology.
Brain plasticity, absolutely. So I'm curious, a lot of the people that I work with, so when I'm coaching them, for example, and my own experience in the corporate world, I spent many years in the corporate world, and I would say I was entirely cut off from my body. I was basically living from the head upwards. So what's your experience or your thoughts for people that do feel very disconnected? And I often have people say, well, I literally can't feel anything. Where do they start to build this kinesthetic awareness?
And I want to say one more thing, that when you start to be connected, you may not feel so pleasant in your body.
Also
because there could be a lot of stress that you hold inside. So where it starts is with subtle movement. For example, people can lie down and gently move their elbows in rotating motion, let the forearm be rested, and gently move the forearms in rotating motion, where they can move the head gently. But then, this is the thing, you need to self-diagnose your limitation. I'll give you an example, and Allison, you try to do it, see if you succeed, okay? And it is this simple. I'm moving my feet in rotating motion in both directions.
Okay.
So all of you can do the same thing at home. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Move your feet. You can probably find that the shin muscles, the tibialis anterior and the extensor digiti, a little bit weaker than the calf muscles because it's easier to put the feet down than to lift them up. That's normally the case.
Yes, I can feel that.
We don't climb mountains, so we don't use those muscles enough and it affects our posture. Now stop moving the feet and just move your head in rotating motion in both directions. Yeah? So you move, let's say 3-4 times to one side and 3-4 times to the opposite side.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely did not mean you move the head in both directions at once, right?
No.
Now, you move the feet to the left and the head to the right. See what happens. Can you easily move the feet to one direction and the head in the opposite direction?
No, they're attuning themselves to each other.
So that is the beginning of self-diagnosis that you can have of how much you are in control of your central nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
You now can have a sense that you actually are a creature of your patterns rather than free. You're not free. I will never forget. That was about 40 years ago. 40 years ago. Can you imagine? I was running on the beach and I was running for miles upon miles. I think about 12 miles altogether. And as I was running, I saw that I'm only lifting my legs, I would say about 3 inches of the ground. Keep running. I said, oh, wait a minute. I want to lift it all the way up. And I found myself doing 5-6 steps like this and again, continuing to lift my legs only a little bit. Then I said, why won't I lift the legs less? I did that for a little bit and then immediately I continued and moved my leg in a particular way. Now, it's a totally voluntary motion. You run, it's voluntary, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not because I'm patterned. If I ran for miles and miles, I'm patterned to lift my leg in a particular way. And believe it or not, people can walk short distance and they only walk in a particular way and no other way. And then I said, this is ridiculous. I lied on my stomach. I did some exercise of crawling, crisscrolling, left leg, right arm, and left arm, right leg, and move my head from side to side. I bathed in the cold ocean. And then I said, now I'm going to lift my leg for the next 200 steps. And that's exactly what happened. And I started to see some freedom in me to do what I want to do with my voluntary muscles. So what basically happens is we think that everything is voluntary until we find out that we are subject to patterns that we built in the past. Patterns can be very oppressive. You can be basically set by your patterns of thought, set by the patterns of movement, set by the patterns of thinking, and basically leave videos of the past and do things in a particular way. I found out that many people who even were paralyzed, there's a certain way of sitting, certain way of moving,
mm-hmm.
that if you change those patterns, they start to move much better. And we have much more discussion about that. But patterns need to be broken so movement can be free.
So how do you, if people want to start exploring their patterns a bit more, the first thing it sounds like is getting to know, starting to observe what the patterns are. And then in order to shift things, what can people do, even in a small way, just to start to shift their patterns to get more range, more freedom?
So first of all, start with breathing. See how you breathe. What's your pattern of breathing? Can you breathe slowly? Can you breathe in and out through your nose? We learn to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, but there's so many mouth breathers in our world, right? Can you breathe in and out through your nose, and can you breathe really slowly? And when you breathe, is it possible for you to feel a good expansion in your abdomen, a good expansion in your lower back, a good expansion in your ribs? So that's one question you can ask yourself. Mm-hmm. The other one is, are you comfortable sitting? So that's a real good question to ask. Can you allow the chair that you sit on to carry your weight? Or are you holding yourself tight? When you lie down, are you allowing yourself to really drop your weight on the bed or on the floor, wherever you lie down, and let the bed carry you? When you stand, Do you allow your feet to really be all the way on the floor? That's the beginning of the question. The other question is, am I curling myself into a ball and am I tensing all the time? So, for example, one little advice I give to people, because people sit so much, is to stand every 20 minutes and to stretch the legs like so, like to lift the leg up.
Bending the leg up behind them.
Yeah, and to bring the leg up and then to push the chest forwards so then the head falls backwards, and to take away the stress of the lower abdomen and the upper thigh from sitting all the time and tensing. So discover your life. Discover where in subtle ways movement is being restricted. Where are you restricting your movement? And once you learn in a subtle way where you're restricting your movement, you will then know how to free yourself. That's why I wrote my book, Awakening Your Power of Self-Healing. The reason why I wrote my book, Awakening Your Power of Self-Healing, I gave people many options of breathing and moving. We have 600 exercises in that book and 400 illustrations. Some of them are good. Some of them will improve in the next edition. I have, every time you write something, you think it's good until you read it again. But nevertheless, people can evolve with the body.
Yes. So
and can have
really breaking free of self-imposed limitations that maybe we're not even aware are there. And I know that you talk in some of your work about the importance of empowerment and self-empowerment.
I want to tell you something. Like apes and monkeys, we have millions. In fact, I heard about 200 millions of cells in the brain. That the whole purpose is to imitate others. So every boy at the age of 11, every girl at the age of 8 already know what adults want from them. So they will walk in a particular way.
Okay.
They will move in a particular way. It's interesting that when I try to teach people to walk correctly, which means to bend the front knee, to mobilize the ankle, to kind of walk forward, heel to toe, it's very tough. Until I teach them to walk backwards. And backwards, no problem bending the knees and walking toe to heel. Because they never needed to walk backwards in society. There was no proper way of walking backwards. It's just not being done. But as you start to walk backwards, you start to walk forwards much better. Because the only change can come with demonstration. The more you demonstrate to yourself that things can be done differently, the better you move.
That is so interesting. I used to go to China a lot in a previous life. A long time ago, I used to go to China a lot with work. And in Shanghai, there's an area called the Bund. It's along the riverside. And in the mornings, if you go at about 6 a.m., people are doing Tai Chi and ballroom dancing, all sorts of things. There's also a lot of people walking backwards. And I could never understand. I couldn't ask them. I could never understand why they did that. I do wonder if maybe there was something going on there as well, experiencing the world in a different way, changing their gait. That's yeah.
Well, there's several things. All my training courses, when I teach people to do my work, they first have to work on themselves. And in my training courses, we first of all walk and run backwards. Those people who cannot run walk. And those people who cannot walk imagine they do. And those people who can run backwards, and sometimes for miles. And what that does, it teaches you to move without using your eyes. I mean, you do. You look from time to time backwards to see your environment. And also it allows your neck to stretch. But basically, when you know the environment is clear, for the next 50 steps, you don't actually use your eyes, which you do normally. And so you start to have the sense of movement without the exterior senses. You still hear the wind, stuff of that nature, but without using the eyes, it's a whole different experience.
You're basically trusting what your body is doing.
And feeling. And then walking sideways breaks a certain pattern as well. I mean, you do see what you do because now it's only sideways, but it's a whole different feeling. That's why I like this Israeli horror dance where they dance sideways a lot. But sideways is such a good way to also loosen the hip. Pay attention to how many people lose their hip joints in our society. Many more than we want to count. I mean, a hip replacement surgery on Harley Street is pretty rich, because they have so many people who need hip replacements. But if we start to walk sideways and backwards, we are now in possession of our legs, even at the age of 90. Let's put it this way.
Quick break from the interview to tell you about our shop and a deal we've got on there, and also about some events that are coming up. So if you go to embodiedfacilitator.com/shop and use the code podcast50 is the code, you can get 50% off anything in the shop. And what have we got on there? How to design training, trauma for facilitators, breath work, leadership, resilience, life purpose. There's a bunch of books, there's a bunch of e-courses, mostly for facilitators, trainers, coaches, yogis, different ebooks. But that code will give you 50% out off anything at all there in the shop. So that could save you, let's say, up to £100, which is about $120. So well worth having that code. Go to embodiedfacilitator.com/shop. Also on that website, you will see embodiedfacilitator.com/events-calendar. Just look under events under the main title. You'll see all the stuff we've got coming up for events. We regularly have free online events. If you're interested in embodiment, we have them on coaching, life purpose, marketing, or trauma, all sorts of things. So have a look at the events page. You can see the different one-day events we've got coming up related to the conference and all kinds of other stuff. Okay, so all of that is on embodiedfacilitator.com. And remember that code there. That code is podcast50 if you want 50% off anything. There you go. Good deal. Back to the interview.
And so the point that I'm saying is the movements have to be free, and more things happen. As you walk backwards, your shoulders and your neck have wonderful traction. They're becoming a bit longer because we are used to be slouching and moving forwards. So that walk backwards gives you a big rest from this. So we have all kinds of funny exercises. We put glasses of obstruction over one eye and look with the other eye. And we throw balls to each other as we are running backwards and sideways in the beach. When somebody passes the other throws them a ball, they throw it back to them. And so we start to work with our whole body with a whole different setting. And it doesn't take a sophisticated gym. It could be in the park, it could be on the beach, and it can make a huge difference to what we can do. So you really brought a very important point. Learning to move differently than we normally move is the beginning of a huge change in our body.
Yeah.
It increases the movement of the joints. And I love to use the trampoline for that reason, a big trampoline, because I teach people not to do somersault or anything of that nature. I mean, athletes can do that. But to do just regular bouncing where the trampoline holds you and pushes you down and you move around and things of that nature, that makes such a huge difference for people. And while I admire people who do somersault, we don't allow it in our place for safety reason. But landing on your behind and landing on your knees, if the knees are okay, I mean, we definitely check on that. Sometimes bouncing on one leg and letting the trampoline give you a way of moving in a free way, and you let go of your body. That's the important thing, because
really experiencing the body in all its different possibilities that are available to you.
Exactly. And now that we're returning to breathing, every way that you move differently causes you to breathe differently.
Yes.
Because really deep breathing comes with change of side. So if you pay attention as we talk, I walk different. I sometimes get close to the screen, sometimes far from the screen. I don't want to be in one place and to freeze myself. And when I give sometimes private video sessions, I always take a 30-second break and walk outside to the sun to do some of the sunning exercise and to relax my eyes in order to return to the screen. And that's what I would recommend everyone who is looking right now. Look at the distance. Rest from looking. Don't do one thing. So change of temperature, change of movement, change of what you're looking at, and the distance with which you're looking. Sometimes I will look at the TV. Sometimes I will look at the hole behind it. And if a window was open, I would look outside of the window. And those are the things to do to breathe deeper. You cannot breathe deeper just deciding to breathe deeper. You breathe deeper with a change of movement.
That sounds amazing. In your work, you've also worked a lot with people with paralysis and polio, things like that. You touched on it briefly, and I'm curious as to how you moved, I guess, from thinking about the vision into working with these kinds of people, and how you're applying those principles you've shared to this work with people who've got more severe movement limitations.
When you look at my lens and you see how damaged it is comparing to a normal lens, you ask yourself the question, how can that person see?
Mm-hmm.
And definitely, how can he drive? I've shown my lens to someone who says, I'm driving. But anyway, I had all kinds of jokes like, the bumps on the road are braille for blind drivers. Right? Anyway, people ask me, how dare you drive? I said, what do you care? They don't look, I don't see, we're all the same. But anyway, what I wanted to say is this. With this incredible damage in my eyes, I was able to build up substantial vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about people who are paralyzed and they have all kinds of damages, and how can we substantially change their lives and help them move better? So I'll give you a few examples. I had one lady with multiple sclerosis, and she was walking with a cane.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I remember I met her in England. She came to me for sessions in England, and then she came to a beginning of a training course of mine. I have a segment A, segment B, and part 2, and all kinds of sessions. So she came to me for segment A to learn to do more things. Beautiful lady. And one would think she's really paralyzed with her leg. And I discovered that all that was is that her little toe was truly paralyzed from the multiple sclerosis, where basically the myelin sheath disappears, not enough input goes to the toe, and the toe cannot move. But then she was never, let's say, relaxed. She was stressed, as most people are. And so her knee was tight and the hip became tighter because the toe was not moving. So it looked like a miracle where within 4 sessions, I was able to get her out of the need to have a cane simply by loosening the muscles that were always tight. But then it took 2 more years to get that toe to move because that was more essential paralysis. So when I look at paralysis, there's 2 parts for that paralysis. One is the essential paralysis, the essential disease that causes the paralysis. And one is all the setting of the body, how the body freezes around the paralysis. So when I worked with polio patients, it was something similar, but often their paralysis is something they're so used to that they can't think in any other way. I'll never forget my best client, Vered from Israel. Anybody who read my book, Self-Healing, My Life and Vision, or right now it's in the book, Movement for Self-Healing, knows about that case. She came to me, and I worked with her when I was still a university student. And it took me 2 years to get her to even lift her foot by half an inch from the ground. That was fantastic. And we were able to get the quadriceps to do it. But once she came to a training course of mine, and I told her, lift your leg on a stool. She said, you're out of your mind. How can I do that? And I said, do it. And one guy wanted to take her aside and said, tell us what you want to achieve and what you don't want to achieve. And she didn't want to think about it like many people want you to do it. She said, I don't know. And then she looked at me and said, "Yeah, out of your mind." I said, "You're right. Just do it." And she did it. And then I said, "Lift your leg on the table." And she was able to lift it on the table.
Wow.
And then easily on the stool. And then she put her hands over her face and fell down. And the reason is, all these years, it was clear to her she cannot lift her leg. But it was not clear to me. And that mental effort to lift the leg in spite of a polio paralysis made it possible for her to do it. But she already worked on herself for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that there are moments that I see much better. Lately, it's a bit better with me. But in the past, when I would have flash of real clear vision, it scared me because it was something so different than what I'm used to. I was used to a certain vision. And then all of a sudden, it's a different vision. With more vision comes more responsibility. People can do for you what you always ask them to do for you, because now you see enough to do things for yourself, right? So all kinds of things were going on with my mind and my change of vision. And that's exactly what happened with many people with paralysis. Now, when we talk about muscular dystrophy, it's a bit different. The muscles die, basically.
Okay.
And there are 102 different muscular dystrophy illnesses. We work on 7 of them. But they die. So what we do is we massage them very, very gently. We then shake them. And then we get the person to move in water where it's easier to move.
Mm-hmm.
And the result is that we can help them tone their muscles because they're not able to move as easily as you and I can move out of water. And that is what's so important for me. You know, when you're 15, 18, work on flexibility. When you're 20, continue to work on flexibility and strength. When you're 30, continue to work on some flexibility that you achieved in your teens. When you're 40, know that you lose some of it, but maintain as much flexibility as you can have and have as much strength as you have. And when you're 50, you can build more strength than you did in your 40s even, as long as you're consistent in what you do. When you reach to your 60s and 70s, accept that some of your strength have diminished, but walk and work and loosen up your body all you can. When you reach your 80s and 90s, you still are aware that you have lost some, but still mobilize yourself. While, you know, in your 60s, you can walk 2 or 3 times a week and you do 5. Not in your 90s. You have to walk every day and maybe shorter walks, but you have to walk every day.
Just maintaining the exercise and maintaining the types of exercise.
Exactly. And when you reach your 100, you have to tone it down, but still mobilize yourself. Then you have the life that you deserve to have. Because otherwise, you're already in your 60s, you become an old person.
Mm-hmm. So
and I'm
expanding possibilities in our minds and the things that we think we can do, exploring to see actually, are there other movements? Are there other things that we can make available to ourselves? Exactly.
And I met many vibrant, mobile, and capable people in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And in the 70s and in their 90s. And I'm very, very happy that exists. You know, believe it or not, there are attractive people in their 90s. So life is changing. But if we don't understand where we are and what we need to do.
Yes, that's the first thing.
It becomes a big problem. Until these days, I can get my elbows to touch each other. Most people in the 20s cannot do that.
Yeah.
Right? Let me give you an example. Try to do it.
Wow. That looks like, has that been a lot of practice to be able to do that?
Yeah. But, and the practice goes like this. I'm kind of stretching my whole back to loosen it up. But, you know, when I was 18, I was stiff. And then with enough work, I was able to put my leg behind my head.
Okay.
I never got to 2 legs. I was able to stand lotus on my head throughout my 30s. Now I can stand on my head in my late 60s with my legs on the wall, and I can do half lotus. Okay, so I've done work, and these days the point is to feel stable and stretched.
Yes.
even in your 60s, even in your 70s. And to feel good about being in your 60s. Not to say the good old days. No.
Absolutely.
Today.
So, Meir, is there something perhaps you can share with us for our listeners if there's somebody who would like to try a small exercise, something that's going to help them get more into their bodies, get more of that kinesthetic understanding of what's happening? Is there something you could share with us, perhaps, that we could try?
So I want to do with you, are you allowing me to do a couple of different exercises, huh?
You can do a couple. We've got about 10 more minutes. So as long
as I'll do one. If I have 10 more minutes, I'll do one.
Okay.
One thing that I want to say is that since you told me that many people will listen, but even those who watch me, you can now listen. Darken your room if you can. And the first thing you do is rub your hands.
Okay.
Interlace your fingers and move your arms in rotating motion in both directions. And interlace your fingers, put them up and move your arms in rotating motion in both directions. And I'm going to shorten this exercise simply because I want to say more things today, but normally do it 6 minutes, 3 times a day. Now we're going to do it for about 3 minutes, yeah? So put pillows on your table. I have what's called a palming stick, which I can lower and higher. I think there's a Bates Society in England that has nice palming sticks. We also have them, but I think you can get good ones in England. And what you do is you rub your hands and you put your hands around the eye orbits. And here's the point. Here is where I wish I was with every audience at home. Don't press on your cheekbones. I wish I could touch you to show you how you put your hands over the eye orbits. Don't put pressure on your cheekbones. Instead, put your hands very gently. Your eyes are closed. Hopefully you're in a dark room. And first of all, feel how the abdomen expands as you breathe in and shrinks as you breathe out. And I cannot emphasize enough that you don't put pressure on your cheekbones. And by closing the eyes, you can breathe deeper. And feel that the ribs and the chest and the middle back expand when you breathe in and shrink when you breathe out.
Mm. Okay.
And feel that your head expands when you breathe in and shrink when you breathe out. And then again, when I teach classes, we go and we massage people's shoulders as they do that, which really helps. Even if we do it for 30 seconds, it makes a big difference. So drop your shoulders, drop your elbows. Never put pressure on the cheekbones. Your head is straight, so it doesn't bend or straight or goes backwards. Visualize the head goes up to the ceiling. Breathe deeply and slowly. So you feel that the abdomen expands as you inhale and shrinks as you exhale, that the ribs expand as you breathe in and shrink as you breathe out. And now you imagine that your head expands as you breathe in and shrinks as you breathe out. You visualize your arms and forearms. Forearms, fingers, elbows, and arms expand when you breathe in and shrink when you breathe out. And you visualize that your hips expand when you inhale and shrink when you exhale. And that your thighs, your knees, your calves, and your feet, they all expand when you breathe in and shrink when you breathe out. So your whole body expands and shrinks, and you make no effort. It's almost like you let the breath come really at ease with imagining and feeling. It's easy to feel the upper torso expanding and shrinking. For some people, it's okay to visualize that the head expands and shrinks. It's harder to visualize that the legs expand and shrink, maybe the knees. And you visualize, you see darkness and maybe even blackness. And you breathe deeply and slowly. And slowly take your hands off. One thing that I want to say is that in my book, Vision for Life, and my book, Awakening Your Power of Self-Healing, I talked about the 9 principles of natural vision improvement. And the first one is deep relaxation of the eyes, which we exercised right now. And then the second one is adaptation to different light, amplitude, and frequency. We should adapt to the dark of the night. And in London, you don't have a dark night.
No, we don't.
You have lights. And you don't have them in San Francisco. You don't have them in Tel Aviv. But there are places in the country where you have them, and we don't have enough of them. On the other end, doctors discourage us from being in the sun. And I think we have to adapt to the gray sky and to the bright sky. And the specific sunning exercise with the eyes closed, where we move the head from side to side, it helps us to adapt to the sun, where the pupils expand and shrink. And we want to start to look at details. What got me out of my blindness, my teacher used to say, when I was trying to kind of sniff my brain, look at it, smell it, something, said, look away, you don't see anything anyway. If you can think about what that did to my head. Well, I learned to look. So I would look at my fingers and the space between them. And I would look at the fact that the person had a head, but the shoulders were wider. And slowly I would look from area to area and build up substantial vision.
So really getting the detail to feed the processing of that's going on in your brain and the occipital.
Exactly. The macula of the eye looks at details. And the reason why so many people lose the macula, they stop looking at details. So learning to look at details and moving from area to area is another principle. Another one is looking at a distance. Modern people look a lot from near. Mm-hmm. People start to see very badly when they start to read a lot. And then they start to see even worse when they start to look at computers and smartphones. So we really need to compensate. I'm not saying stop doing it, but we need to compensate by looking at a distance. And the next principle is to expand peripheral vision, because quite often we don't even pay attention to what happens in our periphery. And I have a wonderful exercise for those of you who are watching, where I put a small paper between my eyes. I put a masking tape on the bridge of my nose, and I wave my hands to the side, and I have a sense of the periphery a bit better because I block what's in front of my eyes.
Okay.
Also, we do sometimes
tuning into what's going on in your peripheral vision much.
Right. For 2 million years, if we didn't pay attention to the periphery, we'd be dead.
Yes.
Because animal would have eaten us, And these days, people walk on the sidewalk, that they don't see anything around them, right? And so then the next thing is balanced use of the eyes. Balanced use of the eyes. Often one eye overpowers the other eye. And there are wonderful exercises for that. Like when we block the weaker eye and exercise with block the stronger eye and exercise with the weaker eye. Yeah. I remember driving my kids, giving them obstructive lenses. Now when they drive me, I take an obstructive lens. Then the next thing is learning to balance the use within each eye. I started it because some people came to me who could only see with one eye. But now I learned that every person, to a great extent, does not know some parts of the eyes that could actually work better. So we put a strip of paper, put a patch on the other eye, and get people to throw a ball from side to side. But there are many wonderful exercises to balance the use within each eye.
And this is one of your key principles throughout, actually, whether working with the vision or working with the body, to really bring balance back. So walking forwards, walking backwards, walking sideways, all these different...
Absolutely. So the next principle is body and eye coordination. And this is, we do a lot of trampoline for that, but many exercises lead to it. And the last and not least is more blood flow to the visual system. Mm-hmm. And therefore you cannot work on the eyes without working on the body. I took a look at most people in the English Parliament, most people in the Congress, if not all of them, all the presidents, the neck moves forward like this. Mm-hmm. And moving of the neck that much forward, to me, means you don't have enough blood to your head. You can't think straight. That's what I think. And that's how they make policies. But what I'm saying is people are not having enough blood flow. 90% of blindness from the age of 60 to the age of 90 are a result of poor blood flow to the visual system. From bleeding in the retina to not enough blood to the optic nerve and many other problems. Also, compliance with eye exercise comes with more blood flow. And so what I want to say is, first of all, we have to understand what makes the blood flow better. Lightness of the body brings blood flow. If the body feels heavy, unless you choose for it to feel heavy, that's...
When you say lightness of the body, what do you mean by that? How do people cultivate that, Meir?
By doing exercises and feeling light. For example, if I will
feeling light, conscious.
Yeah. If I will massage my arms, massage my abdomen, massage my chest, tap on myself, I will feel light immediately. Lightness comes with movement.
Okay.
Heaviness comes
movement, feeling lighter. That's going to increase our circulation and improve
exactly
our physiology.
And heaviness means poor blood flow, basically. Flexibility and relative flexibility again. When I was 18, I was able to sit. When I was 20, because it took me 2 years to develop it, I was able to sit lotus and stand on my head. Not now, but these days, if I sit half lotus and I'm doing it a bit better than the day before, then I'm more flexible. So if you take a person who can put her legs behind her head, she could be flexible, but then there could be a day when she's slightly less flexible. That means the blood doesn't flow well. And then you can have a person who cannot bend much here, but today can bend a little bit beyond his knees. That means today his blood flows better. So more flexibility means blood flowing better. More clarity. You could have a person who is retarded, but now he understands things a bit better. The blood flows better. You can have an Einstein, but now things are kind of escaping him. The blood doesn't flow so well. And with that come breathing. If you breathe a long breath, an easy breath, that means your blood really flows well. And to add to it, if we learn to use muscles we never used before, and then integrate them with the muscles we always use, and have better neurological control over all of it, we can have much better movement. So the art of movement is throughout the whole life, and not in one point and one place. And we are in the world of fitness, tension, and aspirin, and somehow they go together.
So it's bringing that integration together. Meir, we've actually come to the end of our time together. That's shot past, but fascinating. Thank you so much. I wondered if you had any last comments or thoughts about the body you wanted to share, and also to let us know if people would like to find out more about your work, where they can find you online.
So first of all, I just want to say that wherever you are, you can move forwards. No matter what state you're in right now, you just have to believe it and work. Because with faith and work, we can move forwards. And understand that we're off-center, most of us. And we need to start to be more in center in order to make a difference. And we have classes, and I teach also all over the world. I will go to Europe at the end of this year for sure. And I want to have more plans. At this point, my plan is to go to Frankfurt and to go to Austria and to go to Paris. But I would love it if somebody in England would invite me as well.
Fantastic.
And
do you have a website people can look at to find out more information? What's the web address?
Yeah, www.self-healing.org. And maybe we can send you a screenshot or something of that nature. www.self-healing.org. And I just want to repeat that the latest book that I've written is Awakening Your Power of Self-Healing, which is an advanced book on the Handbook of Self-Healing. And the most popular book that I've written lately is Vision for Life. So those two books are books that are available in our store, and you can get them from Amazon and other places. I know several books in stores in London that carry them. And I think that if you can be in touch with us, we have Zoom sessions with people. I'm on many websites as well. And I'm very grateful to you, Allison, for having me on. And I can't wait to see this program in the future. So again, www.self-healing.org. Those who want to call us from England, it is 001-415-665-9574. We have 8-hour difference, so give us a call. We'll be glad to always return your call and talk to you. So anyone who wants to talk about the health and possible sessions online or in person, let us know.
Amazing. Meir, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing this fantastic work that you're doing with us.
Thank you, Allison.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved. The biggest request that we have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it. We would really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/embodiment podcast and give us $1 an episode. That's less than £1 if you're in the UK, so please go there. The podcast is hosted on the embodiedfacilitator.com website, although most people listen to it from iTunes. In iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way that iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help us. Thank you. And if you want to go to the embodiedfacilitator.com, you can see the actual links to the site. There's comments on there. And there's also a Facebook group, which tends to be where people discuss things. So just put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook and you'll find the page. It's relatively quiet, but the group does have some discussion on it and will reply to things personally there. Also on the website, you'll find all sorts of freebies. There's free videos, free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy, and of course, there is our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator course, our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so those are the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook page. Pick whichever one works best for you. Thank you.